Welcome to How It All Started podcast in North Iowa. My name is Erick Nganyange, and my special guest today is the voice of North Iowa, one and only, the radio legend, Bob Fisher. Bob, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you for let me join you here. I know we had talked early in your podcast career. You had stopped out and you talked to Joe Malone and I. Hopefully we gave you some good tips and advice when we sat down and talked with you.
Yes, indeed. And I appreciate you guys taking your time, because usually people are too busy to give you advice of what you need to do. So that was great, because I needed to talk to the real voice of the radio. Because, I mean, podcast is kind of form of radio.
Yeah,
so.
There's that one joke meme that goes around that's, when there's breaking news, they should have a podcast that's live. Talking about, it's kind of like, that's called the radio.
You have a very, very distinct voice.
Thank you.
And your voice is like, how do I put it? I don't want to say the voice of radio, because you can do radio, TV. But when did you know in your life, like, oh, I got something special here?
I don't know about knowing if I had something special or not. I mean,
in terms of voice, not everybody got.
No, I mean, that's a good question, because I don't know if I can really pinpoint a date. I mean, I can pinpoint a date when I knew I wanted to venture off into radio, because when I originally was, I grew up here, of course, in Mason City, went to the University of Iowa. And I was going to be a music education major. I originally wanted to be a high school band director or something like that. I got sidetracked a little bit with things, but one of the things that I was able to experience was a friend of mine that was in the Hawkeye marching band with me. He ran the student-run radio station down at the University of Iowa, KRUI, and he invited me in. He's like, Maybe he thought maybe he heard something in my voice at that point. I don't know. But he thought I might be able to want to get interested in doing radio. And, I did a couple of air shifts on the air, and then that evolved into doing some play-by-play sports. The winter of 1993 and 94, did the University of Iowa women's basketball on the radio rotating through with a great group of 5 or 6 guys that did that, and then that spring did University of Iowa baseball, and I kind of got out of college and, ended up back here at home and, started working part-time on radio. And so, somebody believed me in getting a job, that original job part-time, as well as my first full-time job over in Decorah. And that only lasted 3 months there, but that's because they wanted me back here to work full-time. And, it's been 29, 30 years that, I've been on in one way, shape, or form here on the radio in North Iowa.
What was the first gig when you came back home?
Part-time back then it was just KLSS and KRIB. They were out on in the building on 402 19th Street Southwest, which is where the veterinarian's office and the internet company is out there. That was just a great experience working part-time. I was working weekends. Working once in a while when, somebody was sick or there's a vacation, I'd fill in for them. Getting into commercial radio, really seeing if I wanted to do that or not. And then I was still looking for jobs at that time.
You were still looking for a job?
I was still looking for a full-time job. I was doing it just part-time. Weekends you would, back then on KLSS, you'd run the Mike Harvey Super Gold show, which is a 50s and 60s show on KLSS, and then that would run from 6 to midnight on Saturday night, and then you'd get up you'd go to bed for a couple of hours, and you'd get up and do the 6 to noon shift because nobody else was part-timing back then, so that would include, church services, and so, you were juggling church services and other shows, and then I was able to go over to Decorah, and that was my first full-time job for 3 months, doing news and sports over there at KDEC. AM and FM. Like I say, the owner of the radio stations, Mark Hedberg, would hire me part-time. He believed in me and wanted to, get me back here. I was taking a chance because I knew there was no sports side of that job. People in Clear Lake had the radio station that had covered them for a number of years decided not to carry them anymore, and their boosters came over to Mark Hedberg and said, can we get some games on the radio? And He said, yeah, well, there's this kid that's just started with us back full time that if I don't find him a sports side of this job, I know he's going to leave us at some time soon because he's got some talent with that. So, that's turned into 29, 30 years of doing Clear Lake sports on one radio station or the other, mostly on KRIB, of course. But, here this last couple of months back where, the radio station that dropped at 103.7 The Fox, we're doing the games on there now. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah.
Take me back at University of Iowa.
Yeah.
When you did your first gig, when your friend told you, hey, come check it out. Come try this. When you heard your voice on the radio for the first time, what was that like?
I think everybody that hears their voice on the radio doesn't think it sounds like that. And then maybe you listen the second time or listen the third time. And at least for me, it was starting to critique yourself on how you sounded on the radio, and you tweak it. And I, to this day, I still listen back to ball games that I've done and newscasts as well that I've done, just as a, self-check of everything. You see, okay, pick up something in there that you could have done better on that, or, you did a good job of, calling that play the way it should have been on the radio. I mean, that first day, you get that giddy feeling, obviously, of, gee, my voice is on the radio, and now I'm introducing songs or doing a sports talk show or doing a University of Iowa women's basketball game. I mean, that feeling that you enjoy, and then you want to do that. You want to try to continue to do that.
When did you fall in love with sports?
The sports side of it, and broadcasting wise, growing up, I'd always watch sports. I mean, I really wasn't a great athlete or anything. What I excelled in high school and growing up was the music side of things. That's why I wanted to go into music education originally. But I mean, just having the opportunity of, somebody saying, hey, let's see how you do calling a, University of Iowa women's basketball game and a 250-watt radio station that probably 8, 9, or 10 people are probably really going to be listening to. I mean, that's just to get that experience. And then you go to the next game and, I'm doing better. And then, once again, you just, keep growing on your experiences from the past. And University of Iowa women's basketball back then was probably as good as it is the last couple of years. I mean, they went to the Final Four, and there at one point, it was the year after or before I did Iowa women's basketball for that one season. But what a great way to get the experience of covering a Big Ten team. It's those experiences that you get, and they grow on you. I've been able to carry that passion, I guess, that grew on me in college here to the local level in high school, especially with, Clear Lake stuff. But obviously, when it comes tournament time, anybody around here is, as long as we get the ads sold for the ball game, we're going to go do them and, enjoy covering these local kids.
How do you get prepared for your shows?
Well, like a normal day at work, I get up now at about 4:30 in the morning. Back when I was at Radio Park, that was a half an hour earlier because we had our first newscast on KGLO at 5:06 in the morning. We don't have our first newscasts on our Koloff media stations until just before 6 o'clock in the morning. So, we've shifted things a little bit on the timeline, but not very much. I mean, I'm still getting up early in the morning. Go in, maybe there's been a story or two that's, occurred overnight, maybe an accident or a crime thing that's happened. You write up the story, prepare your newscast. There's been some stories that have, carry over from the day before, so that you're going to have those stories available. Maybe maybe there's a council meeting the night before, you add that story in after you write it up the night before, or you go in and write it up that morning. And then, whether it's doing newscasts live on the air or if you do them, recorded ahead of time, you get that going. And then, of course, you write up some sports as well and do that, do that sports report. Every day is kind of different because you don't know if you're going to go out and cover an event around town, or if you're going to interview somebody on the phone, or if somebody's going to come in and interview, do an interview with you. So, I mean, it's a job that, yeah, there's some mainstays that happen every week that, you do, but there's a lot of things that going on in the community that, you may, pop up that's unique, and, it's, you've got to schedule in at the right time. Typically a typical day, probably go home 12:30, 1 o'clock or so. Sometimes, you just don't get out of the office when you do, if something's, happens.
What is the future of the radio?
That's a good question. Smaller towns like ours, there's still a need for local radio. From the news and sports aspect, a lot of people a lot of people recognized that there was a deficit of news coverage on a number of things, during this past summer when I was between jobs. There's a lot of issues that are going on in this community that need to be talked about,
Yes.
that need to be covered. From the sports aspect, the people at Clear Lake obviously were very disappointed that their coverage of baseball and softball season got cut short this past summer. So it's, those local things that in communities our size, that if, managed properly by the companies that we work for, that is, those are things that are, very attractive to people here in communities this size. If you go to the larger cities,
Yeah.
yes, there's some niche radio stations, news talk type stations that, definitely focus on local. There's a lot of stations too that are just music that you could easily get on Spotify or Apple Music or whatever that. People ask the same question when satellite radio started back in the late 90s and early 2000s. Well, why should I, worry about local radio when we've got satellite radio and I can listen to the same programming wherever I drive around? I'd always say, if your kid, is in that championship game, for their sport down at Des Moines or the Unity Dome in Cedar Falls or whatever, or if you have a tornado that's barreling right down on you, you're not going to get that from satellite radio.
No.
So there is a need still for local radio. I want to go back to what's happened here with, the Alpha Media radio stations. And I will say this, first of all, the people here on the ground locally that work for Alpha Media are still great people. They are working hard. They've unfortunately, from their corporate people, have been handed a tough situation. Yeah. I'm not slamming at all here any of the local people, because they're still great people, still my friends, still my family. It's the decision that was made above them on the corporate level to this, as well as many other markets here in the Midwest, where it's just kind of like, what is the advantage of taking a lot of your programming to satellite programming and not having that local personality interact with the listeners or talk about things such as, your community calendar type things, your event that's going on, your soup supper, your
Ask the Mayor.
You look at Ask the Mayor, and thankfully we've been able to carry that over, at least in a podcast form, on our website, northiowanow.com. Nobody in the business understands why that decision was made by Alpha Media to do that. And once again, I got to stress, it's not the local people here; it's the corporate people that are the people that made this decision. And nobody understands it, because like Mankato, Albert Lee, Fort Dodge, down in Grinnell and Newton.
Oh, they cut all those places?
They made cuts in all those places.
Oh, wow.
Watertown, South Dakota. The first one was in Moberly, Missouri, where you're cutting your staff, you're cutting that localism, and just making these radio stations homogenized. Those are the places where local radio needs to be done, and that's what we're trying to do. Carrie Lee, Jim Koloff, our owner at Koloff Media, recognized that right away, that there's a local, that local news, that local sports need is here in the community, and that's why he's hired me here. Jared Allen, that was let go as well. He's working up at KIOW in Forest City, and B103, their sister station that's licensed to Brit but works out of Forest City. So he's got a job. Britt Bailey is working for us part-time here in Mason City at the Cold Off Media Stations. Everybody's favorite question, what's Tim doing, Fleming? He's still thinking about his options. He's not retired. Can't use that word yet. He doesn't want to use that word. He's still thinking about things. I mean, he worked for 47 years. He was so community-minded. Here's people that are here in the community and care about the community. And most people that work in local radio in these smaller markets get invested in the community that they're in.
Well, yep.
And, if the person that's on a satellite thing, they don't know that they're on a Mason City or Clear Lake or Sheffield or Floyd or, I could name every town in North Central Iowa. So, yes, back to your original question. Local radio does have a future. And obviously we have to, get into the websites. We have to get into video streaming of ball games. It's things like that. Yeah. But that's what keeps the company, with Cold Off Media still there and still relevant in communities because they're bringing services to the people, the communities, services that, radio has brought to communities for over 100 years.
Mm-hmm. Did you guys see it coming with the Alpha Media?
Well, the first set of stations they did was in Moberly, Missouri. And in fact, our new market manager here, that's for Cold Off Media, Bob Dakin. He's our market manager for the Mason City and Charles City and Cedar Falls stations. He was the general manager down at Moberly, Missouri. And he just told me the other day that, that was definitely one of the worst days of his radio career, having to tell those people that they didn't have a job anymore because Alpha Media was delocalizing that station, for lack of better words. We saw that, Joe and I specifically saw that, a couple of weeks, that happened a couple of weeks before our situation happened here. That's maybe, probably for the first time that a red flag is really raised, in my career on something probably going to go down. And then you get that note from the general manager, can you come in and see me on this date and time? Sure. But I could, the general manager at Alpha Media here, Delina Bars. And once again, Delina's great person, great friend. There's been no animosity between us and that let go and, the staff here. But I mean, you see that, then it's kind of like, well, I've got some time. I can come in and talk to you now, the day before. Well, you kind of got to come in that time. So that was like, oh, this is happening today. Or this is happening tomorrow, actually. It's tough. Jim Koldoff had come to me 2 or 3 years prior to that and asked if I would come join his company, doing news and sports, doing the job that I'm doing right now. At that point, it was not the time. If the time comes, I'll be more than happy to come work for you. And obviously the time came on May 22nd or 3rd or whatever it was. And that was one of the first people that I let know that, they kind of figured that it was going to happen. So they kind of put a bug in my ear, asking, are you ready to come over? And before that happened, I'm like, well, I still got a job. And then when that happened, I immediately texted them and said, let's start talking. It's happened. We'll see what happens. And, I took the whole summer to look at that job as well as, see if there were any other offers that came up. There were a few offers that came up that just, were great to have, but they just didn't totally interest me. And I wanted to come, give Cold Off Media a try here. And we've been, September, end of August is when I started. We did a little prep week and then we started on air that first week of September. So it's been a good first couple of months, I think.
Let's go back that day your general manager say, oh, come talk to me.
Yeah.
How much time did you have when she dropped the news, like, hey, you're done, before you pack everything up?
Yeah, maybe about an hour.
Really?
Up stuff. You go in, you see the general manager and the human resources person there. And, that answers the looming question of, is it our day for the cuts or not? You have your moment with them. Once again, you have a general manager that you've worked with as well as the human resources person. You
Yeah.
both worked for them for 30 years. Well, I mean, you have, the emotional part of it because obviously they're upset. You're going to be upset because your job has been eliminated.
Yeah.
And we did go through that, but we also, at the same time, we knew that there were greener pastures out there for me, potentially. I was glad that they still had a job. I was, disappointed that somebody up the ladder in their company made it tougher to make them do their job, for them to, with their jobs, with what the cutbacks were being. But I mean, at that point, you're just kind of like, okay. And I told Joe before I went downstairs, I'm like, if this is the day, I'm going to get done with my meeting. I'm going to go find some boxes and I'm going to go pack up my office and get the heck out of here because there's really no reason, there's no reason to hang around. Yep. They're not going to ask you to go back on the air because the worst thing you can do, and that's everybody's favorite question, with Tim and I, why didn't they do this and then give you a couple of moments on the air to say your goodbyes? That's the worst thing you can do. Yeah. I mean, because you don't give an open mic to somebody that's just gotten fired or laid off. People keep reminding me I shouldn't say fired, got laid off or whatever. Because in the history of radio, typically what happens after you let somebody go on the air and do that is the FCC usually comes in and fines your company because they've popped off and said a word on the air that they're not supposed to say. So, I mean, you don't do that. Very rare exceptions to that. I mean, when somebody's retiring, you give them that chance to express their thoughts. Yeah. You're letting them go. You don't because who knows what the heck's going to fly out of your mouth. There was no reason to stick around. I sat down and talked with Tim Fleming, right after he had his trip down to the office and, was informed of what was happening. And we talked a little bit with everybody else that was in the building as well. But, there was really no reason to stick around.
Who was the first person you called outside that building?
Called.
Oh, informed.
Well, the first person outside the building that I informed was my friend that works with Cold Off Media, Carl Woolridge, who's the general manager up at the 4 city stations for KIOW and KHAM. I just basically was like, what we expected has happened. It's time for us to start moving forward with what you guys would like to see happen and maybe potentially what I would like to see happen. So let's, have a little cooling off period. And it was that week heading into Memorial Day. So we didn't want to, do a meeting the next day or anything, but he was the first person I texted and, said, this has happened, what we expected happened. Let's get the ball rolling and move forward. And, obviously let your family know and people that are close to you, because there were a lot of people that are like, well, we heard you on the air in the morning and then flip on the radio to get the noon news and you're not there. What the heck happened? Can't believe it, So, you try to let those people that really need to know why you're not there. So
what type of emotion was going through? Anger, fear?
Since I was expecting it, I'd prepared myself. I think probably especially knowing that I potentially had the job that I was going to take and have now, I was probably more mad that this corporate radio company and their people way up the ladder. Once again, I hate to keep emphasizing that because I don't want anybody to get the impression that this was a local decision. It was up the corporate ladder. I'm mad, and I'm still mad that company, this corporate tier, is taking radio stations like KGLO and KRIB and KLSS and the other 2 radio stations as well. They don't have as long of a history in our community, but they're still were great stations. That they were basically taking those legendary heritage radio stations in our community and basically gutting their localism. KGLO has been on the air getting close to 90 years. KRIB's been on since 1948. KLSS, one of the first FM stations in this community. Looking back at all the ways that those radio stations have served the community. you got the localism of those radio stations. And I've been more mad about that than I have been about me losing a job. I knew there was most likely a safety net under me with taking a job with Koloff Media. I really was never mad, fully mad, for long periods of time about losing that job.
How do we protect the local radio from big corporation eat them up?
Well, that's a tough question because obviously there's definitely been a difference between corporate radio and family-owned radio stations. You look at, the Koloff company, Koloff Media and Koloff Digital and, everything of their offshoots. It's a smaller company, but it's a well-run company. I mean, once again, Forest City, Mason City, Charles City in New Hampton, in Cedar Falls, Manchester. They just bought a AM/FM group of stations in Maquoketa over in far eastern Iowa. But it's a successful, small, family-run company that just started here in North Iowa in this area. Tony Koloff grew up in Mason City. His first job one of his first jobs, I should say, was at KRIB. He and now his son Jim have been able to take this company, keep it, local minded, and they've been able to expand a little bit. But there's, they're just here in the northern tier of the state. It's tough though. Mm-hmm. I mean, you have companies that were, throw a whole bunch of money your way. You look at KLSS and KRIB's history. Mark Hedberg and his dad Paul owned those stations. They owned, and I know I'm going to miss some stations here, but Spirit Lake, they had stations. Storm Lake, up into Minnesota. It was a small company, but somebody came along and said that back then it was Three Eagles Communications. They came and said, here's some money. We want to grow our portfolio. They offer you enough money, you're going to take it. I don't foresee that happening though with the Koloff Medias or what Sean's doing down in Hampton. I don't foresee large corporations necessarily buying those up because those these people are local minded, local based, local minded, know how important those radio station entities are to their communities. So I don't really see that happening. It's just keeping those stations relevant in their communities. That's the big thing.
And tell us what's going on in our community.
That's the big thing.
That's a big deal because and you are filling up that vacuum because we've been having this vacuum. So if without you step back in there and tell us what's going on in our community, we have no idea.
You look at the last 10, 15 years in this community. And once again, these are people I don't want to make it sound like I'm ripping on them, and I know I'm probably sounding way too protective. But KIMT, a lot of people have been, they moved up to Rochester. The majority of their operation. There was a reason. TV markets are bigger than radio markets. First of all, my favorite example was telling people when they, why would they want to move up to Rochester? Well, I would tell the people, let's imagine if I fill this table with a whole bunch of money. And I divide it not down the middle, but I divide it off where you have 60% of the table and 40% of the table. Which side? I tell you, if you're gonna take the money on one side of the table and have to leave it on the other, which side of the table are you gonna grab?
I'm not greedy, Bob. I'm gonna take 40%.
You're not greedy. You're the only person that said that. But most people be like, the 60%. Yeah. Rochester is a growing community. Mm-hmm. Obviously Med City, there's a lot of money in Rochester.
Yeah.
It's not known as the Mason City TV market. It's known as the Rochester TV market. And the other thing too is they've had a problem keeping reporters. That's why they also moved their news operations up to Rochester, because Rochester is a more attractive place for a 22, 23, 24, 25-year-old coming out of college looking for that first job in TV, as opposed to, Mason City, which once again we've had a lot of people stay in this community that have started in the community. Colleen Frine, obviously they're Chamber of Commerce director. She got her start here at when KIMT was here. That's the the one off the top of my mind that I can think of that has come here and stayed here in the community. That's one of the reasons they moved out. The Globe, I've been friends with through the years with a lot of their reporters and a lot of their staff. And, unfortunately, Lee Enterprises has made decisions on what the future of newspapers are. And I think that's had a great impact on, the staffing of that newspaper in this community. We're so used to having that 6-day, 7-day newspaper in their hands. Lee Enterprises obviously had a great impact on what the newspaper coverage is in this community. We try to spit out great information on a daily basis to people. And obviously from what you said, obviously you think it's relevant. So, I mean, it's been good. So,
it is. And I'm going to get to the North Iowa now.
Yeah.
Because it is relevant to me. I love the Ask Mayor conversation you guys have, because in about 20-some minutes, it helped me to understand everything that's going on, even though I did not go to the city council.
Well, and that's obviously a program that was on KGLO for a number of years.
Yep.
And, that was one of the first things that, we looked at. Those 103.7 The Fox and 98.7 Kiss Country really aren't the formats for radio stations where you can do long format, news, things like that, conversations like that, like, we were able to do on KGLO. But, we all agreed, and the mayors bought in, Mayor Schickel and Mayor Crabb and, their staffs as well. They bought into the idea right away. We'll just throw this on as a podcast. Looking at the numbers on people clicking on the website, people are going and listening to it. You were alluding to, you look at in the newscast, it's probably 20-second, 25-second sound bites on average. Yep. We're able to have that conversation. I'm able to ask a question. Both Mayor Schickel and Mayor Crabb both know that I want them to give the long answer, the detailed answer. And that does help better explain some of those issues to people, whether it's what's going on in our downtown or over in Clear Lake, going on with their Destination Iowa project with the surf or whatnot, or if we've got obviously the bike trail project going on here and, a few other things that are going on. But that, that really opens up having a conversation, being able to ask some of the questions that, in our most recent podcast with Mayor Schickel, it came out last week that, President Biden was given this mandate about, in 10 years, municipalities need to make sure that there's no lead in the water pipes. It's great to ask Mayor Schickel, and I planted the question in his mind ahead earlier in the week, saying, hey, I want to talk about this. Can you get the numbers and everything so we can better educate the public on this? Because I'm sure there's somebody out there that's thinking, heard that announcement. That
made me think.
It's like, I wonder how much lead's in our water system.
I think
you look at what happened in Flint, a decade ago, and how much chaos that caused that community financially, as well as just the chaos of having all the lead in the pipes. You can have that conversation. That's what people enjoyed about that program in the past, and I just thought, we all thought it'd be a shame to lose that. So thankfully, we're able to throw that up on the news website, and people have thankfully, found it and been able to listen to it and respond.
And that goes back to the local. You can't get this stuff to the satellite news.
No,
this is the things we care about,
right? As
the local residents of Mason City, this is the only thing we want to know.
But once again, you're able to talk about that in a free forum. Sure, you can take some of that information as well and make a separate story, from the conversation. When you run on the newscasts that go on the air, then you point, people to the website. Hey, listen to the whole podcast on NorthIowaNow.com. Just being able to have sit-down conversations, just like you and I are right now, and being able to discuss those issues in length without having it confined to that 15, 20, 25 seconds or so of a soundbite in a newscast.
Yeah, and I think that's where we're going. People want to get the detail.
Yeah,
what is actually going on. On May, you're leaving Alpha. You're going to call off media at the end of August. What is Bob doing this couple month here? Is he taking a long vacation to Greece?
No.
Is Bob just
I don't have a
relaxed?
passport, so I didn't get to go to Greece. The first half of the summer, I'm involved in the Mason City Municipal Band here. So that concert season goes from the Thursday of Band Festival until the Thursday after July 4th, typically. So I kept that commitment. I mean, that's been something that I've not only been a player in that group, for the last 20 some odd years, I've been the announcer, the MC, or whatever you want to call it, the host for the concert. So I'll get up and give a little talk about each of the tunes we're playing. So I didn't want to lose that. Yeah. I didn't want to let that go. And then end of July came. I started thinking about vacations. Like all summer, I kept stewing about I need to take a vacation. Yeah. I mean, I need to go someplace that is kind of outside my normal spots to go. And I did get out to the Northeast. I'm just like, I decided on a Thursday, and I booked my flight on a Friday, and I flew out of Minneapolis on Saturday. That's how quick I decided the trip. I went to Niagara Falls and Buffalo for a couple of days, and I was going to drive across the state. I was going to hit the Baseball Hall of Fame, the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame in Springfield, Massachusetts, then go to Boston for a couple of days. And I had an old college friend that communicated with them, and I wanted to see them for, just however much time they would budget for me. That trip, unfortunately, got cut short because of some family things that went on. But I was at least able to get out and experience. I mean, I took some great pictures of, they've got a light show at Niagara Falls at night, and, they shine lights on the falls, and great show, and they put off fireworks and everything. So I mean, that was fun to experience. Got to the Baseball Hall of Fame, and it's been one of those places that's kind of been on my bucket list in the back of my mind to go, but I just had not found the opportunity. So that just kind of popped in my mind, and like I say, unfortunately, I had to cut the trip short because of some family matters that I had to get back here for. But still was able to get out of town for a couple of days and really enjoy a different part of the country that I've been in New York City, but I'd never been that far north in New York and Massachusetts. So,
okay. Did you come back home because of your mom passing?
Yeah.
Okay.
My mom had a stroke, and it was we thought it was best that I come home. She was in the hospital for a couple of weeks, and got through some complications. We got her moved out to West Campus to start therapy, and unfortunately the next morning, right after we moved around on a Wednesday afternoon, and the next morning she unfortunately had another stroke and passed away a couple of days after that. She was able to indicate to us that she was done fighting, and it was I keep telling people that she made her own decisions right up to the end, and that was probably the right way to. If you're going to go out in that fashion, be able to do that. I mean, she loved life. She, the strokes were an unfortunate side effect of a test that she had up at Mayo, that she had to go off blood thinners. She was able to get right back on them right away afterwards, but unfortunately a clot had formed, and it's made things definitely a little stressful here. To start the new job right at the same time that she passed away, but getting through that, there's still a lot of stuff. Was settling up some things, but it's been an interesting last 2 months to say the least.
I bet. How many kids did she leave behind?
My brother's 12 years older than me, and my sister's 10 years older than me.
Oh, okay.
So their sister lives in Valdosta, Georgia. Brother lives over on the South Shore of Clear Lake. So.
Oh, okay. Oh, so your brother's right here.
Brothers, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Nice,
yes.
nice. Most of the time, we don't really. Especially most of us, we don't really think about death until our loved one are gone.
Right.
Then we start thinking, what is your thought? What is your process of death?
Well, about a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, and my dad passed away, and that was at least somewhat expected. He was kind of early onset dementia, and kept falling at home, and he fell one time and he got admitted to the hospital, and he passed away, several days later. So, that was more of, expecting. You can get yourself somewhat ready for that. Obviously, what happened with my mom obviously didn't, it was totally different. leave her in good spirits to go off on vacation and come back, when you get that first word that she had a stroke, and then, able to at least enjoy as best as you could, the time you were able to spend with her, the following couple of weeks, and then thinking, hey, she's going to get some rehab done, try to get best as possible. And then she, unfortunately has a second stroke. Definitely more unexpected. And that happening the same week that, I started a new job, and I really don't know the right way to describe it.
Yeah.
Obviously very stressful trying to manage all of that in our life. And, but once again, I guess I go back to, she saw, some of her relatives be in a nursing home. And once again, I know I'm probably not going to use the right words, but this is the best way to describe it. I guess, they basically at the end of their lives after being in, she had one aunt that was in a nursing home that was there for, at least a decade, I believe. At the end, she was just a shell of a person. The shell was there. There was nothing else there. She did not want to go through that process. And I don't think any of us really want to go through that process of being in a nursing home and just being there as a shell. She didn't want to do that. And like I said before, she made the decisions right up to the end. She was able to indicate to us, I don't really want any more treatment. I want to go through the hospice process and be done. She was able to communicate that. We were able to respect that. I could only hope that, when it's my turn or anybody else's turn, that they could have that type of a situation where they're able to make their own decisions right up to almost the last second of their lives. I mean, that's all you can hope for.
Was she still living at home?
Yeah.
84.
84. She's still driving. Wow. I mean, she was doing the test that she had was basically a test where you go in, they film you walking, and then you go and they take a little of spinal fluid off of you. And then you go right back after you get that procedure done to go get videoed again. Then you compare the two videos and see if you're walking any better. She had a little, issue walking, nothing major, but, she was still getting around. But she thought maybe, if there's an opportunity and, if it did show success, they can put a shunt in your brain and drain a little bit of spinal fluid through you and pass out. That way would help your walking. Unfortunately, there wasn't very much of a difference in between the two videos. But unfortunately for that test, she had to go off her blood thinners. Okay. She had AFib and she, was on blood thinners. And we all know, your doctor always says, well, we can do this procedure. There's X, Y, and Z risks. Most of us go ahead and get the test done, and unfortunately for her, it was, she fell into that 1%, 2%, 5% or whatever that unfortunately had the side effects. And that's eventually led to her death.
Sorry for your loss, Bob.
Thank you.
Switching gears, let's go back to the North Iowa now. How did that all come about? Is that a offshoot of Koloff, or that's completely...
That's Koloff Media, and Koloff does have a digital division of the business that specifically deals with websites. Jim Koloff, the owner, it was his idea. We've got some news stories as well that get fed in from our stations, KCHA in Charles City, as well as KOW up in Forest City, and the news directors up there. Mark Pitts over in Charles City and AJ Taylor up in Forest City. They feed in some stories to that website as well. Okay. I'm the main editor of the website. The majority of that information on the website is what I generate here out of the Mason City operation. For me personally, the website creator and our company IT guy, Chris Berg, who's also on the air over in Charles City. He worked for me part-time running ball games over at KRIB a number of years ago. So it's good to come back and have that relationship again with him. Yeah. I mean, once again, it seems like old home week. I mean, going Mason City operation, we've got a salesperson that, I used to work with over at the old operation, Harry, of course, on air on the Fox. We worked together for a number of years. So, I mean, it's just been great to build those relationships again. But that website I think it's pretty good right now, but it's going to be a work in progress. I mean, we're going to see what, does work, what doesn't work. Mm-hmm. I'm sure we'll make tweaks, at intervals on that website, funeral announcements, obituaries. People can, we're getting the funeral homes bought in on sending us those that we can publish on the website as well. Those are the main staples.
Yeah. I like the local news.
Yeah.
I can go in there and just, because I have you guys saved as my favorite, so I can go in there just, okay, what's going on?
And everybody listening to this, she needs to make that their favorites too. So.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, even if I did not read anything yesterday, today I can go back and say, this is going on. Oh, okay. Oh, this is what is going on in the city. How much is the social media you think is impacting the media?
Well, and I'll answer this obviously from a national standpoint. It's not helped. Okay. I mean, it's the whole misinformation, disinformation, however you want to call it. Social media has unfortunately made it such a debacle because what I bet everybody's been guilty at one point of spreading misinformation just because they see something and they believe it's from a reliable source, which it may not be, and they pass it along, or they repost that, or they pass it along to their friends through a Facebook message or whatever. That's the one thing that I would stress. And I know a lot of this, dealing with election season, this is getting the big push, but I would say this in general. Make sure you're going to would normally be trusted sources. Yeah. Now, some of those sources can be biased one way or the other, and that's another aspect of what you need to do as someone processing information. Look at the source. If it doesn't look like a trusted source, that means you shouldn't be passing it along to your friends.
Yeah.
Yes. Fox has a little bit of a slant to the right. Yes, CNN, MSNBC have a little slant to the left. You can still take their information and process it, and also process it with that thought in mind that, maybe there's a little slant in there. It's all about processing the information.
Yeah.
You really need to look at where you're getting it from, A, and B, if that place is a reliable source, is there any potential for some bias in the reporting or not? What I've championed, my stuff locally here, I try not to be biased. Obviously, I've got some thoughts in my mind on certain issues. Sometimes they may accidentally slip in to newscasts, but I try not to. I mean, that's always been and that's why especially when it comes to political season, and unfortunately, I don't think we're going to probably be able to get any political programs on just because of the transition time like we've had in the past with candidates. That's why candidates on both sides of the aisle have, put some trust in me to talk, sit both candidates down and talk about the issues, because I may ask some questions that may be tailored to one candidate or the other, but they both know that I'm probably going to ask them questions that are going to be done in the right way. Social media has made stuff so more complicated.
How do you keep your bias out of the way when you have conversation with
Well, I think there's, and if we're doing those types of programs, I'll have a list of questions written out ahead of time and I want to explore, but I also try to write those questions out in a form that isn't biased. That helps me, not teeter either direction. It's like the school voucher, and that's probably the big one, legislatively, the school voucher issue, whether we should be doing school vouchers for private schools or not, for people that want to send their kids to private schools. Yeah. Obviously, there's a definite divide in that issue. Republicans at this point want to continue funding that program. Democrats are against it.
Yeah.
I have my opinion on that. How are you going to ask a question that doesn't, teeter towards that person or that person and show, and then shows off your beliefs in that issue. So that's why, once again, that's all preparation of, I've got to ask the question just the right way. And if I interject a follow-up question, I've still got to find the way, because then I'm ad-libbing, basically.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to, you take one of their points and you try to have them expand on it to understand why they're going that way, or, have the other candidate expand on their things. And, there may be a little at that point, why do we really need school vouchers for private schools? Yeah. So you just try to tailor it that way. You try to stay right down the middle. Nobody's perfect. You're going to teeter a little bit, and I'm registered as a Republican, but the only reason I'm registered as a Republican because I wanted to vote in a primary with somebody that I knew that was running, and I wanted to vote for him. If you look at my political tapestry of what I believe in, what I would be, I could never run for partisan political office, I don't think, because my beliefs on issues are all over the place.
Yeah.
There's some that would be lining up with the Democrats. There'd be some that would be lining up with the Republicans, and I knew I would, and I know I could never probably be, looked at favorably by one side or the other.
Yeah. Talking about that, how do we go about to cure the divide that we have right now? I know if the only person can have the answer is Bob.
I don't know if I have a good answer. We're really divided right now. The political parties are divided right now.
Oh, yeah.
You look at the Republican Party, there's obviously one sector of the party that is 100% Donald Trump and his supporters. There's another segment of the party right now that is not for Donald Trump.
Yeah.
We've obviously seen a fractured Democratic Party here in the state trying to get things pointing in the right direction. Unfortunately, the caucus process, the reason that on the Democratic side that was lost was because of some unfortunate choices that were made at the state level of the party. That turned the National Democratic Party against Iowa in having that first in the nation process for having our presidential candidates come here on the Democratic side. Back to your original question, though, I really don't know if there's a good path forward to curing this divide. Are we going to have another 9/11 to bring people together again? And let's face it, how long did that last? That lasted a couple
months.
Well, I would say a few years. I didn't go that far. But then we're back divided 20 years later.
Yeah.
If not, I think you can go back to the 2016 presidential election with Trump and Hillary Clinton. There was a big divide then in the country. So that didn't last. Obviously I don't want to see another 9/11 happen, but, it kind of makes you wonder, do you need something like that in the country to basically, knock people in the head and say, we're going about this the wrong way. We need to start having a little bit more coming together and figuring out the issues, as opposed to, by God, I'm on the right or I'm on the left.
I don't want you to
and I'm going to be way the far over here, and there's no right answer that you can tell me that change my ways and things. I don't know if there's really a good answer at this point to bring us closer to full bipartisanship. And once again, I know there's a lot of things in Congress and a lot of things here at the state level that get voted on in a bipartisan fashion that people do agree on. But there's some issues, obviously, that we need to figure out that, once again, are just completely on the opposite ends of the aisle. And there's people that will hold the rope to make sure that people don't go toward the middle.
Yeah. Do you think maybe the answer is right here in the local? Us as the citizens, that because it's not just politicians. This thing is already spilled in our homes. Well, some of us, it's like, my neighbor voted for Trump. I don't want to not do with them. Oh, my.
Well, I mean, if you're a Democrat and you have your next door neighbor flying the Trump flags and have the Trump placards and filling their lawn and whatnot, obviously you're probably not going to be too happy. But that being said, they have a right to free speech, and you can fill your yard with
whatever
all the Harrison Walls signs and fly the flags or whatever you want to do to support your candidate.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, it's being good neighbors. I respect your opinion, and this maybe goes into further answering the previous question. I respect your opinion. I may not agree with your opinion, but I respect your opinion. We don't have much of that nowadays. I don't think.
No.
Which is unfortunate.
No, yeah.
Just in normal everyday life.
Mm-hmm.
There's several people. I've told them, I respect your opinion. I don't agree with it.
Yeah.
But I'm going to, back you up 100% in you having that belief in your opinion. I may try to sway your opinion, and I hope that you understand that I'm not trying to do that in a fashion that would make you mad at me or anything. I want to have a constructive conversation. I don't want to yell at you. I don't want to shove my beliefs in your face.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's what we need.
But
conversation you're talking about.
But unfortunately, most people nowadays don't
want to talk.
I'm set in X way, and I'm gonna shove this idea down your throat, and you better believe it, or you're not going to be my friend. I mean, that's ridiculous. We need to have. You talk about neighbor and neighbor there. Are our neighborhoods the same as they were 40, 50 years ago? Some are. Some neighborhoods are great. People get together, but you probably don't see the block parties or anything like that like you used to. I mean, once again, that is society and I use this in loose quotes, evolving, because obviously we've had different forms of entertainment. We may not give a hoot about the person that lives across the street from you, or maybe not even met them. It's those things where you don't have the block parties anymore. You don't have the, in many cases, the constructive conversations with your neighbors. We need, a little bit more of that as well.
Oh, yeah. Maybe we need to go back and find our commonality.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Because I think that's the piece we kind of completely forgot. We are so keen in on the thing we disagree. We completely forgot, okay, what do we have in common?
We probably have more in common than we realize.
But then it goes back to
but if you're stuck on your one issue and you're butting heads and you don't want to, you don't want to try to find the middle ground
until we have that conversation. Mason City High School,
class of 1990.
Then after that, you went straight to
the University of Iowa. Once again, started out as a music education major. Yeah. A lot of people always, and I freely admit this, a lot of people ask, what'd you graduate in a degree with? And then I try to move the conversation on to something else better. I was not the best. I was not the best student in college. There's no finger of blame to point to anybody. There were several factors in why I kind of got off track in college. Some of it was clashes with specific professors.
So you did not graduate?
I did not get a degree. I always follow up that story with, fortunately, Mark Hedberg, who owned the KLSS and KRIB back in the 80s and 90s, was able to give me a part-time job, and I worked there for 9 months, October to April of 94 to 95, and then I was able to get a full-time job on resume tapes and whatnot, KDEC and Decorah. Worked there from April to my first week on the job was when the Oklahoma City Federal Building was bombed. So I mean, that puts things in perspective of how long ago that was. And in July '95, Mark called me up and said, basically, would you like to move back here and come work for me again? So fortunately, I've been very fortunate to have opportunities despite my stumblings in college
party.
for lack of, well, I mean, it was a little bit, no, it was a little bit of everything. I will not disagree with you on if people know the Hawkeye marching band, they know that they are not the shy and quiet types. I'll just leave it at that.
What instrument do you play?
I'm a little brass guy.
Okay.
In fact, we got Tuba Christmas coming up here in Mason City. Short, quick plug. If you like Christmas carols, come see them played on tubas and euphoniums and baritone horns and everything. It's December 14th, Southbridge Mall, in the Principal Performing Arts Pavilion at 1 o'clock. So, like I say, I play in the municipal band here in Mason City, have been since I was a substitute player back in high school and early on after I got done with college, or in the summers in college as well. I've been a regular player in that band for a number of years, and seen Russ Kramer, who graduated with, was a couple of years behind me. Is 87 or 88 graduate of Mason City High School. He's taken over, of course, the band program at the high school, and took over the municipal band as well. So, low brass guy and trombone. I haven't played trombone in a while, but euphonium, baritone horn is my main instrument. And like I say, being involved, co-coordinator of Tuba Christmas every year, and then playing a municipal band. I wish I could had more opportunities to play more. I just, it's like the Nyack concert band. They rehearse on Tuesday nights. Unfortunately, during the winter season, Tuesday nights in Iowa means high school basketball. So don't have that opportunity. I mean, I'd love to play in that band someday, but just unfortunately does not work into my time schedule.
Yeah. What advice would you give to the young Bob who's about to graduate high school and going off to college? What would you tell yourself?
Well, I would say don't have the blinders on, because you never know what type of opportunities will come to you if you have the blinders on. You might specifically if you're looking at, somebody wanting to get into the radio, TV, podcasting type profession. Yeah. If you look at me, I was just, I want to be a sports play-by-play guy. If I would have not taken the blinders off, I obviously wouldn't be doing news. Try things that may be a little bit out of your comfort zone. I was a DJ once in a while, for a period of time on the radio as well, whether it was back in college or my early days here. But that was something that I didn't imagine and didn't, think about doing long term as well. Those would be my two things. Don't put your blinders on, and you may miss an opportunity coming down the line that's just biting at you. That if you got those blinders on, you'll never see that great opportunity.
What is Bob doing on his free time?
I like watching sports. I like to read. I've not read much. If I read, it's nonfiction type stuff, history type stuff, biography type stuff. Okay. I'm listening to more and more podcasts all the time. Good. Because there's, we've got podcasts like this. We've got, podcasts like Ask the Mayor, but there's some great, work being done by people that are talking about, historical stuff or, news stuff, or sometimes stuff that you wouldn't imagine they'd be talking about. Yeah, that's kind of growing a little bit more into me. When I have, real big free time, even though I've spent a lot of nights, especially in the winter, traveling, I don't mind making a run here and there to different places and, enjoying some weekends here and there. That's the complicated, simple life of Bob Fisher, I guess.
All right. What is the meaning of life? What is Bob Fisher think?
The meaning of life? Ooh, I don't know if I've got a great answer on that or not.
Or does the life have any meaning? Or we just here existing?
Well, I think everybody can make a difference if they conduct their life, in a great way. I don't think from what you've said, I've obviously made an impact on this community, and I don't think I would imagine that I would have made that type of an impact on, the Mason City Clear Lake community when I was growing up. I truly believe that there can be good in everyone. Obviously, some people that do not choose to share that with us. I think there's the potential for good to be in everyone. And we just, obviously going back to what we were talking about before, we just need to learn to enjoy why we're here a little bit more and enjoy the people that are around us.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Since you like to read history and stuff like that, if you go back in time and have a conversation with any historical figure and you have them on your radio, have a conversation, who would you pick?
There's so many good answers to that.
You can have 5 of them in the studio. Can they fit?
If I could have 5 in the studio.
Yeah.
Let's see. I would probably start with Abraham Lincoln, just because of, everything that it'd probably end up being 5 presidents.
Okay.
I mean, if I had to. I mean, wouldn't you like to hear George Washington's in a sit-down interview like we've had tonight and just talk about, how things evolved in his life? I mean, you could pick any of the past presidents as well. Winston Churchill.
Oh, that's a good one.
Looking, if I had to choose a segment of history that I enjoy either reading about or watching documentaries about, it's World War II. Obviously, they call that the greatest generation for a reason. And if it wasn't for that generation, unfortunately, we're losing more and more of that generation every day, that fought for our country back then.
So Lincoln, Churchill?
Lincoln and Churchill.
Okay.
I would probably I got to throw a sports person in here, don't I?
Yeah, it's up to you.
Babe Ruth, maybe.
Okay.
He'd be fun on the radio. I mean, I've heard a few radio interviews with him through the years. Who else? Wow.
And you can go as far back
I know, and I'm
as
trying
possible.
to. Jeez.
It's the only shot you get, Bob.
I know. That's why I'm having so much problem picking 5 people.
And you know how hard it is to get all them in the room, and you're about to get a chance.
Especially in my current office, it's a heck of a lot smaller. Well, my office back at the other place wasn't that huge.
It was tall enough for Lincoln to walk in there.
Well, yeah. I mean, who else? Gosh.
Well, I will tell you what, the person, since you mentioned World War II, the person I'm fascinated about, and I don't want the listener to take this the wrong way, I would like to have a conversation with Joseph Stalin.
Obviously, the role that the USSR played in World War II, and then all of a sudden, after World War II ends, the U.S. and Russia are
enemies,
Cold War enemies for the next 45 years.
I have a feeling they knew it.
Oh, I mean, I think both sides knew that once that war was done, that they were going to be bitter enemies, but they knew they needed each other at that point. And Stalin would be good. You throw in some of the other, lead dictators of that, just to pick their brain on why, why did you do that? Let's see, who else? I've got 3 down. I know. Yeah. I need 2 more.
I mean, you don't have to.
I might stop there just because I have so many names popping to my mind, but who's the right to? I mean, do you go back as far as Julius Caesar?
Oh yeah, you can go as far as you want to.
I mean, I don't know. History. I mean, that's really a question I would really want time to think about if that was really going to happen. So
yeah, Julius Caesar will be interesting too.
Yeah.
What is the legacy Bob wants to leave behind?
Well, unfortunately, if you had asked me that question 4 or 5 months ago, I'd have been like, I would have finished my career with the radio stations I was at, and having been with the radio stations I grew up with, and I grew up with, at least one of the 2 radio stations I'm working with now. So I don't want to, throw that, make it sound like I'm throwing them at the bus. I had hoped, to have those long tenures and then, gracefully bow out when it was time to bow out.
Yeah.
Obviously that didn't happen. I want to try to finish that legacy, basically building something from scratch. Mm-hmm. I want to take this current operation with Koloff Media and see it grow. And obviously, I know I've had an impact on the community with providing local news and the sports that we've done as well, having that impact. I just want to continue having those impacts until it gets to a point where I either just don't want to do it or, it's time. I've told a few people, I'm like, hey, if I get to a point where I shouldn't be doing this anymore, come tell me. And they've been more than happy. They've, of course, laughed and been like, oh, we'll be more than happy to do that. But, I just hope that, I was able to, have a great impact on people's lives in one way, shape, or form at some point, whether it's covering their kid, making the winning play to win a state title, or if it's, a news story that impacts somebody positively or negatively, but they still appreciate the coverage. I just hope that, the stumbling block that happened this summer does not hurt, what I've tried to do in this community with outside of radio. I hope my legacy can also be, having served on a few boards and stuff, community-minded boards, and, making an impact on the community as well. So I don't know if that answered that question very well, but.
Yeah, it did. You think you found your calling in life? Radio is your calling?
Well, fortunately, yes. Once again, when I went to the University of Iowa, my first thought was I want to get into music education. Something happened that steered me towards radio, and I've just, probably the reason I work so hard is because I know I, had some struggles in college with things, and I don't want to. I just was like, I've got an opportunity here. I don't want to waste it.
Yeah,
I definitely found the right direction. Took me a while, but it's been a while since that's, I've gotten steered in that right direction too. So
great. Anything else you want to add, Bob?
No, I know there's a lot of projects going on in our area that, some people may not get or may not understand, but I think there's, these are projects that are going on to try to attract more people here and, get more people excited about moving to our area, and not only people, but, business prospects moving into our area, economic development. And, I think we're going the right, direction with this community on a lot of things. And, people I know, once again, have, obviously everybody makes the joke about the skywalk to nowhere. I don't mind making that joke too once in a while, but it's there for a reason. We're going to get through this. It's unfortunately been a slow process with the mall and stuff downtown, but hopefully getting moved in the right direction with that. The bike trails and the bike park, I think, is an innovative project that was pushed by a great group of local bike enthusiasts, and obviously, getting a Destination Iowa grant. There's obviously economic development people that were excited about that. Clear Lake, with their Surf District project and making that great area of that community even better. I know some people have questioned that one as well, but I think that's going to be a great project to bring the surf ballroom into the more further into the 21st century with that music and enrichment immersive center. I think we've got a lot of great things going on in our communities, and
I agree.
And hopefully, I think there was a point in time where, especially Mason City, was unfortunately a little bit stagnant in moving forward some ideas, and I think that did hurt. But I think, here in the last 10 years, I think we've tried to point the ship in the right direction. And, I think we're starting to see, a lot of people are like, why are we concentrating so much on downtown? Well, 20 years ago, we were concentrating a lot on the west side of the community. It's cyclical. It happens. And, the city's going to concentrate on what needs to be done and what needs to be done to try to bring business and people here. So,
yep. Well, that was our own North Iowa legend, Bob Fisher. Thanks, Bob.
The legend thing,
no, he's not. He's not.
It's
not flowing right.
Well,
right.
I just always am, a little awestruck when somebody says I'm a legend. I don't know if I'm a legend or not, but that's me being the humble. I'm just glad that I'm able to share my talents with my hometown.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that's the thing. That's why I keep enjoy living here. I mean, one of the job opportunities I had was to move to the Twin Cities and do some stuff up there. And I'm just like, I don't want to move to the Twin Cities.
Yeah.
I want to stay here. I want to see this community. I want to see this community flourish here in the next 5 years. So I think we're going to
staying back.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for staying back. And
thanks for having me.
By the way, I never heard or seen anybody being called legend, and they say, "Oh yeah, I am a legend." They all say the same thing.
Well, LeBron James didn't do that. No, just kidding.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you very much for having me. Appreciate it.
No problem.